Welcome back to the mountain today. We're going to work on our mini truck, but before we do, we got to clean it up, so we'll give it a nice, soft, gentle sponge bath and get it ready for work. All right, and just like that, she's clean enough. All right, so the problem we're trying to solve today is this constant velocity joint boot appears to be broken, and I'm not sure how it happened, but we can't leave it like that. So we got to get this half shaft out of here. I think I need to do a little bit better cleaning down here because it is pretty nasty. All right, so here's the boot kit that I have. It was actually one that I had ordered for the front seal. We had replaced that about a year ago. Yeah, it has a phone number on it. It has a number on the top that says OJ511. But we did the right thing and we measured the outer end and the inside. And I think these boots are going to fit fine. Let me show you what's in this kit. So it comes with a couple bags of grease to pack the joint once we're finished. It has an outer boot that is pretty close to the size that we need. So that's good. It has an inner boot, or I guess this is the outer boot. I don't know. But anyway, we have two boots and a bunch of these little clampy things. Should have enough to get it fixed. Let's get this thing up on jacks and see if we can do that. So as I said, the underside is a little bit dirty, so let's go ahead and put some gloves on here. Come on, DP, get your big old hands in those gloves. Oh my goodness, I don't even have the fingers in the right holes. All right, so we're gonna use some degreaser, some paper towels, and get those boot areas cleaned up. First things first, let's get this thing jacked up. All right, we went ahead and put some jack stands on the forward end of these springs because we actually have to drop out this entire sway brace in the back, and that's not going to be any fun. We probably should do the right thing, chock the front wheels. Since the emergency brake's on the back wheels, chocking the front wheels is probably a good idea. So we went for more of an air sprayer to spray this degreaser underneath there. It does mean it's going to be a mess and we have to hose it all out, but I think it's more important that it stays clean, so let's get that done. I think the next step to get better access will be to pull these wheels off. Oh, come on. Oh, good Lord, who put those on? Some little Chinaman. We don't need that compressor on anymore. That's kind of obnoxious. We may hose this out one more time. There's still a lot of red mud in here. But let's get the other tire off also. All right, that's quite a bit cleaner. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. I think the next thing we need to do is pull this cotter pin off, get the brake drum off, and see what all that looks like. All right, so this nut right here is a 34 millimeter axle nut. I don't have a socket big enough for it, so we're gonna go to the Hobo Freight and see if we can pick one up. All right, we got the brake drum off pretty easy. We put the castle nut back on the end to protect the threads when we start driving this thing out. I think the next thing we need to do is take these 4 nuts off here and drop this whole assembly down. And we have to do that on both sides. So let's get that done. So as we're pulling these bolts out for the sway bar, we're going to support it with a couple jacks, just because we don't want it to fall and break the brake lines or anything like that. Maybe that's why they're called brake lines. We don't know. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, pull these U-bolts off for the sway bar to let the axle drop down. We don't need to pull the brake drum off on this side. The brake shoes on the other side look pretty good, so why look at this side? All right, we have all the nuts out. We can pull the bump stops off. And luckily the springs are attached, so they're not going to come apart. I think we can drop down the axle, maybe. All right, we were able to push the U-bolts down just a little bit to clear the springs. Now we're still hanging from the shock strut, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And this jack is kind of in our way to get to that CV shaft. So we're going to do the right thing and pull the jack out of this side and hope for the best. Now our whole goal here is to get enough movement in this area so we can pull this inner side of the CV joint out, clear the transmission, and drop it down lower. Now this thing is pretty loose. You can see it moves around, but I'm not sure if it's loose enough. Let's see if I can go ahead and put a pry bar in here and separate this CV joint. Wish me luck. All right, so we're able to separate the CV joint from the transmission, but I don't quite have enough room to get the end of the shaft out and clear. So I think we're going to have to somehow torque this entire unit that way. All right, by putting my foot on this spring mount up here and pushing out on the brake disc cover on this side, we were able to get enough space to get the CV joint down, and it'll just kind of hang here. And now we need to go ahead and drive the shaft out, and then we're almost done. We're not. All right, and just like that, we have our CV joint shaft out. You can see our problem here. The boot separated on this side. Now luckily it still has most of the grease in it, so I don't think there's any damage to the shaft in any way. These surfaces probably should be cleaned up a little bit before we put it back together, as it does this. So let's put a little bit of cleaning on this whole thing. And we got to go ahead and cut this boot off. Well, as you might expect, these front boots from the kit are not the same size as the broken boot, and definitely not the same size as this boot. So we're just going to leave everything right here set up in the back of the truck and go ahead and order the right boot kit. Unfortunately, it is Memorial Day weekend, so happy Memorial Day weekend to everyone. So it'll be probably Tuesday before I can get an order in, but we'll come back to this project then. Good morning, we're back again. So we already decided that our boot kit for the front axle Does not fit the back axle. So we can close this thing up and save it for a rainy day. Now we did the right thing and order a new OEM equivalent set for the rear axle, but unfortunately it's not going to be here for a few days. I know, bad planning. So we did the next best thing and bought one of these universal CV replacement kits. I'm sure that's going to go about like you would expect. Now the original boot, the large end was just under 3 inches, and the small end, which is broken off somewhere, was just under 1 inch. So yeah, the universal kit has 3 different sizes down here on the bottom. Looks like you can go from about a 4-inch to maybe 3.5, but the smallest circle is right at 3 inches on the outside. And the top up here looks like, well, I'm going to say that's just under 1 inch. Perfect. Now it would really be nice to change both boots while we have all this stuff taken apart. This one looks pretty crusty, but it's not broken. So we're going to say, let's go ahead and get everything put back together with this universal boot. With any luck, we will get the OEM equivalent and we'll put it on the shelf. And if we have a problem, at least we know how to do it next time. Now this universal kit did come with 2 clamps and a bag of CV joint grease. Let's get this thing going together. First thing we need to do is clean the old one. Get all that old grease out of there. I'm sure it has all kinds of bad stuff in it. We have 2 things we need to do first. Steal the paper towels from Mrs. P's kitchen and put on our gloves so we keep our hands all cleanish. So the CV shaft has all kinds of like paint or something on the shaft itself. So I don't expect that that's going to come clean. It looks like maybe it was painted originally, but there's a lot of grit and stuff that we need to make sure to get off of this thing. We don't want any dirt or anything inside that boot. That would be bad. Clean all these little gear teeth out. Again, we don't have to be super crazy about it, but we need to be a little bit crazy. All right, we'll say that's fine. We might shoot it with some brake cleaner right before we put it together. And then this side has all kinds of nasties in there. Let's see if we can get some of these out of here. And the problem is that the original boot had a crack in it, so there could have been dirt or other contaminations up inside this thing. And you just don't want to have that in there. So we're going to do our best to get at least as much of this out as possible. Pretty yucky. All right. Now we know we're going to have to cut this boot off, but let's make sure we know exactly where we want to cut it. So, hold on there. All right, so it looks like I can get the last serration up on there maybe. Maybe we'll go for the second one. So we're just gonna cut off this first section, but we're not gonna cut it till after. So we're gonna put everything back together. First step is slipping the boot on the shaft. I will get it pushed up on there a little bit too far. And then we got to put the gear back on the end. And I do want to check this gear. It has all kinds of grease in it. But we want to make sure there's no grit or anything on it because I wasn't very careful taking it out. We'll say it's fine-ish. And that pretty much just slides on there. Might have to tap it with a hammer to get it past where it needs to be. Also, we probably shouldn't have all of our stuff up on a rolly table. We have the bed of the truck jacked up. and everything is rolling downhill. I think that snapped in. Let's make sure. Don't roll off the table. I want to make sure that back edge clipped in. You definitely don't want your CV joint coming apart. Looks like it's good. Now what we have is a bunch of bearings that are trying to jump out everywhere. Got all those in the right spot. Now that's going to go inside this cup, but what I like to do, and I don't know if it's correct or not, is we're going to take a little bit of the CV joint grease and put it in the bottom of this cup. Not a lot of it, but we want some of it in there. We're going to take this thing here, we're going to take some of this nice looking grease, and we're just going to put it around the inside where these balls are going to go. And then push this thing together. Push it way down in there. And then we're going to dump the rest of the, actually, before we put the rest of the grease in, we're going to put this snap ring in, and this is what holds the ball bearings and everything together. So I don't see why we can't put it in now. We just want to make sure that that thing is seated in its little recess here. Looks good. Where'd those paper towels go? We are a greasy mess already this morning. All right, now we're going to take the rest of this grease and we're going to push it in on the back side of these bearings. And it's just like squeezing peanut butter or something in here. Get as much of that in there as we can. And we'll say that's good. And I don't know if I should go, I think we are. We're going to go to the next setting here. That looks pretty good all the way around. All right. So now we're basically put back together. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if we're going to cut this boot off. I think we might just leave it on. So now we have these clamp things. Probably should have put the little clamp on first before we put everything together, but we didn't. So we're going to have to do the unspool method. Unspool it all. Put it around the shaft, put it all back together, and hope for the best. And this thing goes into a little recess. We've got to make sure we're in the right spot. I think that's right. Looks right. And there's a special tool you can buy that we don't have to help tighten these things up. But I think we can just push on it a little bit and bend it over. So let's, it's supposed to like hook on here and go around the back. Let me see if I have a tool that looks something like that. When in doubt, use channel locks. So I think with the channel locks, I can actually hook on the back of the shaft, pull this thing a little bit tighter than I could manually, and then we'll just bend this thing up. And then it's just got little ears here that bend down and connect over the top. And then we'll cut this piece off in a minute. Let's go ahead and get the big end sorted out. Same situation here. We want to unravel some of this stuff because I don't know why they give you so much. I guess if you were using the larger size, maybe that would be a thing. And maybe we should go ahead and tighten it down more. I don't know. Do 2 laps of the thing. I don't know that I can tighten it any more than I did the last one. So we're going to say it's going to go right here. Guess we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to wrap this thing around my finger about 6 times. And we're going to push on it with the pliers on one way. Try to get a little bit of pressure on it. And then fold it down and say that's good enough. Oh yeah, no problem there. And that is super sharp, so it'll cut me next time I reach in there. Same thing, we're going to cut this guy off. So that took totally too long, and I don't have the right tool to secure these clamps. It's probably a problem. We don't know. The right thing to do would have been to use the clamps out of the front wheel kit because they're more user-friendly, but we didn't. All right, so we got this clamp mostly tight. We got this clamp pretty tight. There's this extra boot here. We should really take a razor knife and cut this off just to get it out of the way. Because if we don't, I'm pretty sure it will fill up with dirt and sand behind that boot, and that's not good. Well, this will work, but it's going to take forever to go around this circle. Probably a little less risky, though. Now, one of my fears is cutting the other boot accidentally while we're getting this one all put together. Because it's only about 30 years old, I'm sure. It's never been replaced. All right, made it all the way around. That looks pretty good. Get this piece off of here. Perfect. So let's get back under the truck and clean up all the flanges where these things are going to plug in. We need to re-lube the outside hub and put this thing back together. All right, we lubed up this outer bearing. We used the proctologist method. Pretty much just put a dab of grease on our finger and push it in and push it into the bearing like this. And then we also want to lube the inside here just so that shaft slides back through nicely. I know that's probably a little too graphic, but that's what it's like. We also have cleaned up this inside a little bit, and I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on the rubber seal around the inside and make sure that those inside teeth have a little bit of grease on them. Same reason, we just want it to slide in there nice and easy. That's what she said. All right, this is going to be totally impossible to film. So we're just going to set you guys up over there. We're going to try to slide this drive shaft back through the outside thing and hope it goes in fairly smoothly. You shouldn't have to drive it together, but it doesn't seem as smooth as I was expecting. All right, I think that's enough. Let's see if we can get a nut on the outside. All right, after a little bit of persuasion, we got the axle through the race on the inside. I should probably clean up these brakes a little bit before we close it back up, but we're not going to do that. Now, with any kind of luck, this drum will go right back on there. This little washer goes in, and we get a few threads started. Not sure why it's not going on nice, but that's okay. Why aren't you working? just be able to work this thing down a little bit more, get it lined up the way it needs to go. And spread this thing back out. Perfect. So the next hard part is to try to get this shaft into there. Now last time we had to pull the whole sway bar assembly away from it just to get this up there. So I think we're going to do the same thing. But I think we have to go this way. And we're going to push on the brake drum, if I can. Try to not push us off our jacks. Seems okay-ish. Almost there. I don't know if I had this thing go up or around. There we go. Now we're in the right spot. I don't know what this container thing is, but it's kind of in the way. Now we should just be able to line this back up with the transmission. And we have to push it in until it clicks. Reattaching the sway bar should just be kind of line this bottom little nubbin up inside the axle piece, get these bolts back up on the side, put this tower on and get some nuts on it. That sounds easy. All right, on this side we have the bump stop started. We have not tightened it up. We're going to leave it all loose. We're going to go over to the other side and get it started. Let's do that. All right, we got the shock tower on this side. I'll tell you what, these aren't easy because these U-bolts aren't really single bolts. They're bolts that go through a strap, and if they fall down at all, they get stuck on top of the axle. And it's kind of super hard to get them all four lined up at once, but we got it worked out. Let's go ahead and snug up the bolts on this side. And then we got to get that inboard axle plugged back into the transmission. That should be fun. Does the idea work though? If we hammer on this shaft, does it get the thing in the thing? That's the biggest thing. I think it is going in. There we go. We're all locked in. The only real thing left is to put the wheels back on. Good enough. Kind of need a little extension on here. Now we're just going to snug these up and we're going to tighten them once it's on the ground. get the other side. But don't worry, we're going to put that back in the front tire because I think we're missing one up there. All right, let's get this thing off the jack stands, let it down and torque up those lug nuts, and then we're ready to go, I think. And we'll pull those jack stands out. And all the tools that we're going to crush as we lay it down. And let her down. Slowly. All right. We have the wheels just barely touching, so this is a good time to torque up the lug nuts. Oh, good. Nice. Yep. Perfect. Oh, nice. Good. Yep. Perfect. Now let it all the way down. Well, that was the absolute wrong way to install a CV joint on the rear axle of a 1991 Honda ACTY mini truck. But you guys get outside, do something fun. Come back and tell me about it.